My mother-in-law thought she could frame me with an illegal weapon and prohibited substances to ensure I faced a huge sentence for her organized scheme. What she didn't know was that I was already working with the Internal Security Service to set a trap of my own. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, has always looked at me like I was something she accidentally stepped on while wearing her expensive designer heels. To her, I was just the waitress her son, Mark, had inexplicably decided to marry. Never mind that I have a degree in accounting and a stable career. In her eyes, I was a social climber who had successfully infiltrated her prestigious family. For 3 years, I've endured her passive-aggressive comments, her subtle jabs about my wardrobe, and the way she constantly reminds me that I'll never truly belong in her world. But a few days ago, the mask Eleanor wears so perfectly began to slip, and I realized that her disdain for me wasn't just about social status. It was something far more dangerous. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday morning. Eleanor sounded uncharacteristically frail, her voice trembling as she explained she'd been feeling dizzy and needed to go to a private clinic across town for some tests. Mark was out of state for a business conference, so I was her only option. Despite the way she treats me, I'm a fixer by nature. I thought that maybe, just maybe, showing her some genuine kindness during a vulnerable moment would finally break the ice between us. I left work early, picked her up, and drove her to a clinical center that looked more like a 5-star hotel than a medical facility. Throughout the drive, Eleanor was strangely quiet. She clutched her large, structured leather tote bag to her chest like it was a shield. When we arrived, she asked me to come inside with her, claiming she was too lightheaded to walk alone. The clinic was sterile, quiet, and filled with people who looked like they owned half the city. After checking in, Eleanor was told the doctor was ready for her. She turned to me, her eyes darting around the lobby before landing on mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Sarah, dear," she whispered, handing me her heavy bag. "Hold this for me. It has my jewelry and some very sensitive documents in it. Do not leave it unattended for a single second. I don't trust the staff here." I was surprised by her sudden reliance on me, but I took the bag. It was unexpectedly heavy, much heavier than a wallet and some papers should be. As she disappeared behind the heavy oak doors of the examination wing, I sat down in a plush velvet chair in the corner of the waiting room. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I started scrolling through my phone, the bag resting firmly on my lap. That's when I noticed a woman sitting a few chairs away. She was dressed in a nurse's scrub top, but she wasn't working. She looked pale, exhausted, and was staring at me with an expression of pure terror. She kept glancing at the bag on my lap and then back at my face. Every time our eyes met, she looked away quickly, her hands shaking as she fumbled with a paper cup of water. Finally, when the receptionist stepped into a back office, the woman leaned toward me. Her voice was a jagged whisper that barely reached my ears. "You need to leave that bag here and walk out," she said, her eyes wide. "Right now. Don't look at her when she comes back. Just go." I blinked, confused. "Excuse me? This is my mother-in-law's bag. Who are you?" The woman's face went even paler. "I was her last assistant. She's not here for a checkup. She's here to hand off the weight. If you walk out that door with that bag, you aren't just taking home jewelry, you are carrying a tyažkoje obvinenia waiting to happen. There is an organizované scamma involved with this clinic, and she is using you as the fall girl. They are tracking that bag right now." My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked down at the expensive leather. "What are you talking about? What's in here?" The woman stood up abruptly, seeing a security guard turn the corner. "If the Služba vnútornej bezpečnosti catches you with what's inside, They won't care who your husband is. You'll be facing an Agromny Srock, and she'll be the star witness against you. Run, Sarah." She disappeared down the hallway before I could ask another question. My breath came in shallow gasps. Was she crazy? Or was Eleanor actually capable of something this monstrous? I looked at the bag, my hands trembling. I knew I shouldn't, but the curiosity and the fear were overwhelming. I slowly reached for the zipper, my fingers slick with sweat. I pulled it back just an inch, expecting to see a gold necklace or a folder. Instead, my eyes landed on several tightly wrapped rectangular bricks covered in heavy plastic, and nestled right beside them was the cold, matte black grip of what could only be Nezakonne Aruji. At that exact moment, the door to the examination room swung open, and Eleanor stepped out, a chilling, triumphant smile on her face as she saw me clutching the bag. I zipped the bag shut so fast I nearly caught my own skin in the teeth of the metal. My heart was thundering in my ears, a rhythmic drumming that drowned out the sterile hum of the clinic's air conditioning. I felt sick. The Zaprashani Veshestva were packed so neatly, so professionally, and that Nezakonne Aruji, it looked heavy, cold, and undeniably real. Eleanor glided toward me. Her frailty vanished like a bad dream. Her steps were firm, her posture regal. She didn't look like a woman who had just undergone medical tests. She looked like a general returning from a successful campaign. She stopped in front of me, her eyes dropping to the bag in my lap. For a second, her gaze sharpened, scanning the zipper I had just closed. She knew. I could see it in the way her lips thinned into a razor-sharp line. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Sarah," she said, her voice dropping to a low, melodic purr that sent a shiver down my spine. "The heat in here is a bit much, isn't it? Let's get to the car. I'm ready to go home." She didn't reach for the bag. She left it firmly in my hands, forcing me to carry it through the lobby. Every person we passed, the receptionist, the quiet man in the corner, the security guard by the door, felt like a predator waiting to pounce. I felt like I was walking through a minefield. The woman's warning echoed in my head. If you walk out that door with that bag, you aren't just taking home jewelry. As we reached my car, Eleanor didn't get into the passenger seat immediately. She stood by the door, watching me place the bag on the floor of the back seat. Her eyes were darting to the street, scanning the passing traffic with a clinical intensity. Once we were inside and the doors were locked, the atmosphere changed instantly. The loving mother-in-law act was gone. "Drive," she commanded, "and don't take the main highway. Take the back roads through the industrial district." "Eleanor, what's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. "That woman in the lobby. She said things. And the bag. I saw what's in the bag." She didn't flinch. She didn't offer an excuse. She simply turned her head to look at me, her face a mask of cold stone. "Sarah, you've always wanted to be part of this family. You've complained for 3 years that I treat you like an outsider. Well, consider this your initiation. You are currently part of an organizovana schema that is much larger than your little accounting world. That bag is a delivery. If we are stopped, that bag is yours. I have the paperwork, the history, and the witnesses to prove you've been involved with Zaprashani Veshestva for a long time. I've been preparing for this day since the moment Mark brought you home." I felt the world tilting. She had been setting me up for years? The Tashkoi obvinenia the woman mentioned wasn't just a possibility, it was a trap Eleanor had been meticulously building. "Mark wouldn't let you do this," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "He loves me." Eleanor let out a short, dry laugh. "Mark does exactly what he is told to do to protect the family name. Why do you think he's out of town today, Sarah? He couldn't bear to watch, but he didn't stop it. As I turned onto a secluded road lined with warehouses, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled out from a side street and began following us. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely steer. "Don't speed up," Eleanor warned. "That's our escort, or it's the Sluzhba Vnutrennei Bezopasnosti checking to see if you'll bolt. If you run, you're dead. If you're caught, you take the Ogromny Srok and keep your mouth shut. If you do that, Mark will be taken care of. If you don't, well, accidents happen in custody." My phone suddenly buzzed in the center console. It was a text from Mark. I glanced down, expecting a message of hope, but my heart stopped when I read it. "The garage door's open. Put it in the hidden compartment under the floorboards immediately. Don't look back. I'm so sorry." He was in on it. My husband was part of the organizovanная schema. I wasn't just a daughter-in-law, I was a disposable pawn. Just then, blue and red lights exploded in my rearview mirror, not from the SUV, but from an unmarked car that had seemingly appeared out of thin air. Eleanor's face went pale for the first time. "Don't stop," she hissed. "Drive!" But I couldn't. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. As the officers approached with their hands on their holsters, Eleanor grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "If you open that bag," she whispered, "you'll find more than just substances and a weapon. You'll find the reason your own father disappeared 10 years ago." The officer tapped on my window, his face grim. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle and keep your hands where I can see them. We have a report of nezakonne oruzhye in this vehicle." I looked at Eleanor, then at the bag, and finally at the officer. My hand reached for the door handle, but as I stepped out, I noticed something else. The nurse from the clinic was standing across the street holding a camera, and she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the trunk of my car, which was slowly beginning to open on its own. The officers moved with tactical precision, but they weren't focusing on me. Their weapons were trained on Eleanor, who sat frozen in the passenger seat, her face pale as a sheet. I stood by the open driver's door, my hands raised, but my eyes were fixed on the trunk. It hadn't just popped open, it had been remotely triggered. From inside the trunk, a small, blinking red light caught my eye, a high-end tracking and recording device. The nurse from the clinic crossed the street, tucking her camera into a tactical vest I hadn't noticed before. She walked straight to me, her expression no longer terrified, but professional and cold. "Sarah, step back. We've got it from here." "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Agent Miller, Sluzhba Vnutrennei Bezopasnosti," she said, flashing a badge that made Eleanor let out a choked sound of despair. "We've been monitoring this organizovanная schema for 18 months. We just needed the delivery to be made to tie the nezakonne oruzhye and the zapreshchonnye veshchestva directly to Eleanor's personal handling." Eleanor found her voice, her tone sharp with desperation. "She's lying. Sarah is the one. She's been the courier. I was just trying to stop her." Agent Miller didn't even look at her. She reached into the bag I had left on the floorboards and pulled out a small encrypted burner phone tucked into a side pocket I hadn't seen. "We've been intercepting the signals from this phone, Eleanor. The messages to the clinic radicals, the orders for the transport, and the authorization for the tyazhkое obvineniya you plan to plant on your daughter-in-law. It's all here." But the real shock came when they opened the trunk fully. Resting there were the actual financial ledgers of the family's charity foundation, the ones I'd been secretly auditing for months. I hadn't been clueless, Sarah. I was an accountant, and I had noticed the discrepancies a year ago. I had been the one who contacted the Služba vnútornej bezpečnosti 6 months prior. The trip to the clinic wasn't Eleanor's trap for me. It was the sting operation I had helped facilitate. I walked toward the passenger window as the officers began to cuff Eleanor. "You were right about one thing, Eleanor," I said, my voice steady for the first time. "The bag did have the answer about my father." Agent Miller handed me a sealed evidence bag from the trunk. Inside was an old rusted watch and a set of keys. My breath hitched. My father hadn't just disappeared. He had been the previous accountant for Eleanor's organizované schema. When he refused to cook the books, they made him go away. Eleanor had kept his things as trophies, hidden in a safe that she only opened when she thought no one was looking. I had seen her with them once, and that's when I knew the truth. "You're a monster," I told her. Eleanor glared at me, her eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. "You've destroyed this family, Sarah. Mark will never forgive you." "Mark is already in custody," Agent Miller interrupted. "He was picked up at the airport trying to flee with the offshore accounts Sarah helped us flag. He's facing an ogromny srok for his part in the money laundering." The weight that had been on my chest for 3 years finally lifted. I watched as they led Eleanor away, her designer heels clicking frantically on the asphalt, a pathetic contrast to the gravity of the Tverskoye obvinenia she was now facing. She had thought I was a puppet, a low-class girl she could use and discard. She never realized that while she was playing a game of social status, I was playing a game of justice. As the sun began to set, Agent Miller stood with me by my car. "You're a brave woman, Sarah. Most people would have run." "I did it for my father," I said, clutching his watch through the plastic. "And I did it so I'd never have to look at her face again." I drove away from the scene, leaving the organizované schema and the life I thought I knew behind me. I wasn't the waitress she hated, and I wasn't the victim she wanted. I was the person who finally ended her reign. I looked in the rearview mirror, not for police or shadow SUVs, but just to see the road ahead, clear, open, and finally free.